everyone. Welcome back to Alison and Paige Talk Canada Reads. Today, we're talking about the first of 5 books that we'll be reading from the CBC Canada Reads 2026 shortlist. So the first book that we read from the shortlist is The Cure for Drowning. The Cure for Drowning.
The Cure for Drowning.
We're really talking about the fun and all our thoughts and feelings, and there's lots to say, so I'm just going to get right into it. So the author of The Cure for Drowning is Loghan Paylor, who is a queer trans author from Ontario, currently lives in BC. The Cure for Drowning is actually their debut novel, which is pretty cool considering it's on the shortlist for Canada Reads. It's been nominated and won many awards already. And it was nominated, for example, for a Giller Prize, which a lot of people consider one of the most prestigious prizes in Canadian literature. So Logan's doing pretty well, I'd say, with the debut novel. And yeah, we're excited to delve into it. I'm also just gonna let you, all the listeners, know and watchers that the champion who's going to be championing this book in April and kind of telling everyone about why she thinks it's the one that every Canadian should read is Tegan from Tegan and Sarah, and she's best known for being in a pop duo with her twin sister Sarah. So Tegan and Sarah, I think a lot of us
Classic.
know songs. You can look them up on Spotify. You've definitely heard several of their songs and probably have sung them in your car and all of that. So I definitely recognized her when they were first announcing the books and the champions. I was like, yeah, I know her. And her sister was actually on Canada Reads several years ago. So she's kind of like following her footsteps and is excited to champion this book. So we're going to kind of talk maybe just broadly about some themes of the book before we kind of get into any spoilers. Alison, do you want to give a description of the book, or what kind of would be on the back of the book if you're maybe describing this to a friend who is asking like what the book's about?
So this book is like a slight fantasy historical fiction drama that goes from the perspective of 2 characters, Kit and Rebecca, I think in the 1930s, so during World War II, basically, just before and after World War II. Sorry?
Yeah. Late 30s, early
Yeah,
40s.
late 30s. And yeah, just kind of goes through their childhood and then through the war and then after the war and the relationships between these people. So Kit has a brother Landon and a brother Jep, and then there's Rebecca who moves to their small town. I think it's called Harrisford. And there's sort of a love triangle that happens. So there's a romantic aspect of it between Kit and Rebecca and Landon and Rebecca. And so it's kind of how that unfolds over that kind of snapshot of their life.
Yeah, it's like Canadian historical fiction, queer historical fiction would be the category. I actually was wondering what is the definition of historical fiction? Like, like what is that? And so I looked it up. So usually it's at least set at least 50 years ago for it to be considered.
Interesting.
It's sort of like using the backdrop of that historical context to color like the narrative, the characters, and like our expectations of them.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting. So I feel like a lot of the historical fiction I read is set in like World War II. I don't read a ton, but it's usually what World War II. And usually there's some romantic aspect to it, so that kind of all falls into that same category. So if you like historical fiction, and especially like Canadian historical fiction, I think this is a great like way to step into something that's a little bit like less talked about with the like queer like themes and gender
Transness.
themes. Or the same thing if you don't read historical fiction, maybe you're interested in like reading about gender and all of that, then maybe this will get you into historical fiction. So it did sort of cross like both those lines. So
And I
yeah.
don't read a lot of historical fiction. I've only read historical fiction because of Canada Reads, like last year and this year. And this also has that kind of like fantasy element too, which I think is kind of like a fresh take on historical fiction, kind of blending those genres together. So don't let the historical fiction aspect be a barrier, because there's so much more to the story and the kind of genres and themes that this book goes through. So yeah.
Yeah.
That was a very interesting point you made about historical fiction. I did not know that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So maybe now we'll just draw a line of like spoilers ahead, just so we can talk freely about the
Yeah,
book. So if you want to read it, or you can still read it after watching or listening to this, but we will be talking about spoilers up until the end of the book. So here's your chance to stop now. We are now going to talk about just like
general
general
thoughts.
thoughts on the book. You can go ahead.
I love this book. It was 5 stars for me. I think it was because I just love how the themes around gender and transness and sexuality were treated. It was such a refreshing take on that and the historical fiction. And I'll talk about this a little later too, but and Logan, I was reading this. There's this FAQ about the book on Logan's website, the author's website, where they talk about like whatever happened to this character, or what happened after, and they were talking about how so much of trans media is about examining characters' bodies and examining their sexuality and gender representation, and also a lot of media representation is about violence. But this was very queer joy. It was nice to see the queer person and get the girl at the end, which yeah, I was a little stressed about that throughout the book,
Yeah.
but yeah, I really loved this book. I loved the characters were super interesting. The POVs were interesting, like going back and forth between Rebecca and Kit slash Christopher. Yeah, maybe I'll just stop there as my first kind of initial thoughts and pass it over to you.
Yeah, my initial thoughts, like, well, I enjoyed this book. I liked how I'd never read historical fiction that wasn't a man and a woman. So it was like nice to see that. And it was also just like a well written historical fiction book, like generally. So I think if you like historical fiction, like I think you'd like this book.
What a debut novel! Like what?
Yeah, it was enjoyable. There were like twists and turns, and like, I enjoyed it as well, generally. Yeah, so this is a huge question. Is this a book every Canadian should read?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think that for me, I think it is for a number of reasons. Firstly, like storytelling was really great. I think that the language was accessible and it kind of like hooked you in and taught you about things. I think sometimes when people see nonfiction books, there's kind of a barrier there. It's like, oh my God, that's scary. Because there's this idea that only nonfiction books are like intellectual, and that's how you learn something. But this fiction novel did a great job of teaching you and showing you about transness and about kind of gender and the different characters interacting. An example, like Kit's family still calls her Kathleen, but then you have Rebecca who's respecting Kit's pronouns and gender representation. So yeah, I think people can learn a lot about the trans experience from reading this novel, and so that's why I think it's important, especially in today's climate where there's a lot of anti-trans violence and rhetoric. I think this novel is very important for Canadians to read right now because trans folks are human and they deserve and experience joy as well. That's my soapbox thought on that. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I agree. I really thought it was interesting the way that the author wove in the sort of trans experience, and it was just kind of like matter of fact.
It was very natural. It was like a
Now,
slow uncovering. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It was just kids like I was wearing my brother's shirt. I cut my hair short and I like felt like this and that and it was kind of slowly going from that. It was just sort of that's their life. And so I thought that was like nice as well. And I think okay, getting back to like is this a book every Canadian should read? I think a lot of people could learn from it. A lot of people who are not as like aware of trans experience and kind of pick this up because it's part of Canada Reads, or pick this up because they like historical fiction and learn something from it. And also just like enjoy it as a book. And it doesn't have to be this dense, heavy nonfiction or story. So I think as far as this book that every Canadian should read, I can definitely see that being a possibility.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, again on the author's website, this idea that trans people have been around for a really long time. And when they were doing research, because they had to do a lot of research on the war and that kind of thing to
Yeah.
make it historically accurate, they were talking about how when you're looking at transgender history and historical evidence like around the time of the war, a lot of the information they found was around criminalization or punishment or like media scandal. So jail records and obituaries and stuff. But any kind of gender non-conforming person who successfully passed or lived as themselves would not have left a paper trail for
Yeah,
future
exactly.
historians to look at. And that's what Logan was saying on their website. So just showing that, these trans folks existed during this time, but they had to stay well hidden in order to survive. So there's that kind of lens as well, which I thought was really
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. They're pointing that out. Kit's story, it probably never got out that Kit was in the military. The other thing I liked was showing how Rebecca was working towards a war effort as well, and that was confidential. And I think women are a race, in most of history. So I think adding that in that she was working.
That's an interesting point because they told her not to tell anyone, just a file clerk, and that actually they were a really important part of the war effort.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So I appreciated that as well.
Yeah, and we both really liked that chapter. I think you were talking about it. Do you want to say something about it?
The one with where she's in labor.
Yeah, and they were like,
Yeah, so I feel like the whole book it was a chunk or a chapter, solid length chapter of Kit, solid length chapter of Rebecca, Kit, Rebecca, and then at one point, like 2/3 of the way through the book, it started getting shorter and shorter. Rebecca is going through labor, and then it starts to get really short. And then what's happening with like Kit slash Christopher? Are they in a battle, or they're like drowning or something? Right?
while Rebecca's in labor.
Yeah,
Yeah, they're in like a plane fight, right? Getting hit while they're in their plane,
yeah,
like
yeah. Like
overseas.
Like it was Rebecca sitting in Hattie's apartment and she feels the first pain from labor and then it skips to Kit and Kit sudden pain in their stomach.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh. And then it goes back and forth and that was like really, really well written. And
It was amazing.
that was just well done. So and that was like I can't like I was listening to the audiobook, I was like, I can't stop. Like I can't do
Yeah.
anything right now. I just need to listen.
Yeah, because you listened to the audiobook and then I read the book. How'd you find the audiobook?
I thought the audiobook was really good. It was really easy to tell like if it was Kit or Rebecca because just different voice actors. So
Good.
it was a good audiobook. And then even in that point where they went back and forth, I think if it was just one voice actor the whole time, it would have been confusing. But obviously they knew to have two different voice actors. So that was just well done. I like the audiobook. I think and you read the ebook, so I think if you're thinking about reading this book, like either one is good.
When we realized that Rebecca's pregnant, I was like, oh, not another pregnancy trope. I was like, gosh dang it. Now she's gonna get pregnant and now she's gonna have to end up with Landon and then Kit like loses, as the queer person always does. But like I said, Logan seemed to want to change that narrative and I'm very happy with how that storyline turned out. I wasn't expecting it to go that way
Yeah.
at all. There was always this thought in the back of my mind, Landon's gonna come back, Landon's gonna come back, and then Kit and Rebecca can't be together. But
Yeah.
I appreciated it was I liked the way it went.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Yeah. That classic pregnancy trope.
I
So
was
going
like,
back
no, stop throwing up.
no, how it relates to the theme, how does this so the theme of this year's Canada Raise is a book to build bridges. So we kind of have already talked about this. I think the bridge is, what we know about gender and what we don't, and we're like building that bridge. Like what we assume things are like as far as gender identity and how queer experiences are, and we're building that bridge. Like I
Mm.
think that's the bridge we're building. So I definitely think it builds a bridge, especially as I've said a couple times, like people who read historical fiction, it's a bridge to like, you already read historical fiction, so why not read this? Go ahead and like extend like your knowledge of that. What do you
I like what you said there. What is it? You said like you're bridging assumptions almost, or
yeah, real experience, lived experience.
yeah, like between assumptions and actually understanding what real experiences are. Yeah, I think that's a good one. And I think it also kind of build bridges between people, like people who maybe have I guess I'm saying what you're saying is people who have these assumptions. And then this book can help build a bridge and understand that, like I said earlier, trans people are human. It grounds things in a little more reality.
And they've been around. If this isn't something that just started, you know,
Yeah.
10 years ago or something. Trans people have been around for forever. Right?
So there's a podcast which you sent me that CBC puts out called Commotion, where they have all the champions come together and talk about the books. And Tegan was saying that she picked up this book, read it, loved it, and then continued to read the other books, but kept coming back to this book.
Yeah.
And I can see the bar is high for the first shortlist
Yeah.
read, I would say. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it relates. I would say you agree. It relates really well to the themes, and it just feels very timely.
Yeah. I was reading Tegan's Wikipedia page, and she's done a lot of work for like the LGBTQ plus community. So I think she wanted maybe something that was gonna or be extension. So it kind of adds up that she picked this book.
Absolutely.
Just thinking more about the book. I mean, we've kind of already talked about this. So you said this book is a good representation about like trans people and like different gender experiences. What do you think made this book? I don't know how to say this. Like, how would you, compared to other books who have tried to like explain, different like the trans experience? Why do you think this one did a better job?
Yeah, it's a good question. I just want to say I identify outside the gender binary for our audience members. I don't like specifically identify as trans, but I do have a different gender experience. So I think it goes back to what you said is like it just like was a slow natural uncovering. It was just flowed well with the whole story. It wasn't, violent. It wasn't kind of just like this really harsh examination about gender, trans people's gender representation or bodies. It was just very flow well with the story, and it just Rebecca first thought Kit was a boy and then started switching pronouns and then naturally just started using they them pronouns without even like a hey, I'm
Yeah.
it was just like so well put together. I don't quite know how to explain it, but it just I mean, it probably also speaks to the fact that Logan is queer and trans too, so it helps when the author is bringing in some of that perspective. But yeah, it just felt really different than other books I've read with those kind of characters. So I'm not sure I'm doing a great job of explaining
No, I think that.
it, but that's kind of where.
Yeah, that makes.
And I guess I have a question for you too. Is the title is mentioned throughout the book? I think twice, maybe. I only remember one time.
At least.
We love when a title's mentioned in the book. At
Yeah.
least I do.
Yeah.
How do you interpret the title now that you've read the book? And did that change over the course of the novel?
Yeah. Definitely water as a metaphor, drowning as a metaphor. I wrote down a couple things as I read the book, but if you're drowning, you're not getting enough oxygen. So I'm kind of thinking of like cure for drowning is like oxygen or like a breath of fresh air, or just like
Mm.
feeling good. And like drowning is not having control or on the path to just not being alive. So the cure for drowning is living and living how you like authentically. Those are all the kind of buzzwords around my head. But and Kit, obviously the beginning of the book starts with Kit almost drowning. There's a lot to say about that. And then Kit lives, obviously. And then the first time that Kit and Rebecca kiss, Kit says to Rebecca, kissing you is like the cure for drowning. And we're all just like, oh my God. And so, yeah, I think it's something like breathing the fresh air. And if you think more deeply about it, expressing yourself as you want to, and you're not confined into something that is not you living the best version of yourself.
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah.
Wow,
Anything.
that is such a good answer. I love that. And to add to that point, I wrote down a quote that I thought relates to what you said there, kind of becoming who you are. And there was this quote when Rebecca sees Kit for the first time after the war. And the quote is, it's as if a skilled sculptor had taken a chisel to every feature and fashioned them into a sharper, purer version, the one I'd always seen underneath, which I thought
Mm,
was such a good line.
yeah, I remember that. Yeah, that was.
So yeah, that's similar. I love that. That's a great perspective.
Yeah, yeah. And I also kind of thought at the beginning, maybe this was obvious, but just water as being a symbol in general, just in many pieces of literature as a symbol of purity and cleansing. Kit, this like prepubescent Kit, who went by a different name, drowns and comes out and then is now Kit. And all of the expectations of who Kit is supposed to be were like washed away in the
Oh
water.
my God.
And now you're revealing like who Kit like is supposed to be.
Wow, that's deep as heck. That's so great. I love that. Wow. I just sent
Yeah.
you that question this morning. How did you come up with that?
That, like, right when I read it. Like, I
Yeah.
thought,
Wow.
yeah.
I think that's great. Yeah, that makes total I love that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Water so much, like, it's a good metaphor because it has a lot of, like, context. And the outdoors is, like, an aspect of it. Like, they live on this, like, farm and, like,
So much
not
connection to nature.
connected to nature, like it's all there. So yeah, so I was like thinking about all the characters. We talked so much about like Kit and Rebecca. And so, obviously they're key characters, and Landon's a key character because he's like the brother, the older brother, and the father of Rebecca's, like the biological father of Rebecca's child. Then we have like little Jep.
Oh,
Jep,
Jeffy.
little brother. Like, why do you think Logan like included Jep? Because really, like, if you think about it, like the book could have probably existed without Jep. Um, as far as like the major plot point,
Yeah.
what do you think Jep is?
Yeah, I thought about this a bit, and I think there's a couple things. I think Jep brings this kind of levity and softness and almost is a bridge between Landon and Kit, who both very much love Jep, but obviously have a lot of tension between each other. Jep is kind of like this mediating kind of kid and is very innocent and loves the outdoors and is also a great avenue for building relationships, like between Landon and Kit, but also with Rebecca, because he was the first one to be like, Rebecca, let me show you my things I've collected and all my nature stuff, and sort of is a very sweet, kind, like kind of alleviates a lot of the like some of the heaviness of the book.
Yeah,
And then another thing is I think his trajectory across the novel kind of represents this, and I know it's going to sound cliche, but loss of innocence. You have their childhood where Jep is doing all these fun things and is happy and joyful, and then you see him get drafted into the war, and it's weird because you think he's a kid because I feel he feels like a kid like always. It's weird seeing this adult version, and then at the end he dies. It's almost like the death of so much innocence after the war because of all the trauma and all the things everyone went through. And so that's kind of how he really like fulfilled out the story for me. I
yeah,
think he brought a lot of like, I don't know how to describe it. Maybe like it may have been not the most direct main character energy, but Jep I think was a really good supporting character throughout the novel.
yeah, yeah, and
What
like
do you
brought
think?
like, I think, yeah, you're right. He liked to play, and there were obviously key moments that he was involved in, but as a supporting character, yeah, I mean, I really liked him. He's Jep. It's like even the name is like Jep,
Jep, baby.
so it's like, oh yeah, no, I liked him for
And
sure.
rest in peace, Rat the horse.
I know that. Yeah, that was really bad.
Yeah, but I loved Patroclus.
And
Um,
the kitty cat.
we love a
Yeah,
cat.
I love kitty cat.
And I think, yeah, I'll ask you. I could talk about this novel forever. Oh my God, this video is going like half an hour.
Yeah, I know there's still so much more I can say, but we don't have to say
Yeah,
everything.
I'll ask you like if you want like to say this answer like briefly. Who is your favorite character, and then who is your least favorite character?
Yeah. So, I was thinking about this. Like, I don't want to be obvious. Like, obviously, I like Rebecca, I like Kit. But I was trying to think of who I enjoyed when they kept coming back. It was Hattie, who was like
Oh, right.
Rebecca repaired Hattie's dress before she went on stage. And then, yeah, so she's this cool singer, performer that Rebecca saw. And then when Rebecca found out she was pregnant, she had nowhere to go. She ended up going to Hattie's doorstep, and then she lived with Hattie while she was pregnant. And Hattie was just like this cool, like bohemian, like person who took Rebecca in, and I just like enjoyed that she was like a really good like supporting person for Rebecca. So I really liked her.
When her mom was like,
Yeah, her
"No
mom's
thanks."
mom's like, yeah, her mom's pretty much my least favorite. I mean, she's like, she wouldn't take her in like when she was pregnant. She wouldn't take her in when she had the baby. Like, yeah, so I hated her.
Yeah, and I was reading again in Logan's website that
Yeah,
there's this idea that
Logan's website.
I'm obsessed with the author's website that Rebecca's mom never told her father about the baby.
Yeah, yeah, because I was wondering about that. too.
which
Yeah,
is messed up. I don't
yeah,
get it. I don't get it.
yeah. That was that was sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's so much we could say about like Rebecca's dad. I was kind of
Oh my
like,
God, there's so much to talk about for this book. Like,
I was gonna say something else, but like, yeah, the German aspect, and you know, yeah. But anyways, I don't think we can.
yeah, having a German last name any
Yeah,
association with Germany was very dangerous at that time.
yeah. But anyways, I think like,
And I feel like Kit's parents were so mean to them.
yeah,
They were
yeah.
really hard on them, which like it's hard to say because we only got Kit's perspective, right? Like, but yeah. Anyway,
And then Rebecca being from the city girl, and Kit being like from the country, the less like
yeah,
wealthy family. It's also a classic like trope as well,
yeah,
which is comforting sometimes to have those tropes that are classic and
yeah,
just
yeah.
mesh well, and then just sort of are comforting. So yeah, I think overall this book, obviously we both liked it, especially Alison. And yeah, I think if this book like won, we'd both be happy. I would say. I think I won't speak for you, but I just assume. Yeah, I think we set the bar really high. Like last year, the first book we discussed won Canada Reads, so we also set the bar higher. So I'm not saying who knows what'll happen, but we definitely set it high as far as like our enjoyment of the book. Yeah, I mean, we can mention what book we're doing next. Do you want to let the
Yeah,
audience
the
at
next
home?
book we're doing we'll be reading and talking about is A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Pelcourt, who's a very well-known author, queer, indigenous, queer and Cree, I believe, actually, authors. So totally different style. Got some similar themes there for sure, but I'm doing the audiobook and Paige, you're reading an ebook, right?
So I've just read the first few pages. It's gonna be different, so that'll be good. I'm glad to see that there's some variation. So yeah, we started on a high, and yeah, we're excited to continue on this journey.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in.
Well, thanks for listening and watching.
And if you
See you
read The Cure for Drowning, let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear what you think.
Yay!
Bye.
Bye.